Your thoughts are not your own, and I can prove it. Stop for a second and answer this honestly. The voice inside your head right now, is it really yours? Or is it just a collection of everything you've ever been told, repeated so many times that it feels like your own? From the moment you were born, you were taught what to believe, how to act, what to fear, and what to avoid. You didn't question it. You absorbed it. Slowly that external noise became your internal voice. And now, every time you try to step out of your comfort zone, that voice pulls you back whispering, "You're not enough, you can't do this, you'll fail." And you listen, not because it's true, but because it sounds familiar. That's the trust. You trust it because it feels like you. But what if it's not? What if the thing guiding your entire life isn't even you? Think about how dangerous that is. You are defending a voice that's been limiting you your whole life. You are protecting the very thing that's been holding you back. And the most painful realization, you've never actually heard your real voice. Your ego won't like this, because it means the you that you've been protecting might just be an illusion built by others. And if that's true, then who have you really been all this time? Look back at your life and try to find one moment where you were truly in control. Not influenced, not guided, not pressured, but completely, purely in control. It's harder than you think. The school you went to, the beliefs you carried, the fears you lived with, none of them appeared out of nowhere. They were planted slowly, repeatedly, until they became you. You think you make decisions, but most of the time you're just reacting to pre-installed patterns. Social media tells you what to desire. Society tells you what success looks like. Your past tells you what to fear. And all of it runs in the background, shaping every thought you think you own. Try this. Stop a single negative thought from entering your mind. Just one. You can't, can you? Because you're not generating them, you're receiving them. And yet, you still believe you're in control. That's the illusion. And your ego needs that illusion to survive. Because the moment you accept that you've never really been in charge, everything you believed about yourself starts to collapse. And that's terrifying. Because it means your life hasn't been a series of conscious choices, it's been a chain reaction. And deep down, you know it. What if your mind isn't creating thoughts, but simply receiving them? Like a radio, constantly picking up signals, fear, doubt, comparison, desire, all flowing in from everywhere around you. Every conversation, every video, every memory leaves an imprint. And over time, those imprints turn into automatic thoughts that play on repeat. You call them your thoughts, but they're just echoes of what you've been exposed to. Ever noticed how certain thoughts keep coming back again and again? That's not coincidence, that's programming. You're tuned into a frequency you didn't even choose. And the longer you stay on it, the more real it feels. But here's the part that will shake you. If you can change the frequency, you can change the thought. Which means those fears you carry, those insecurities, they were never truly yours. But you believed them, you built your identity around them. And now letting them go feels like losing yourself. That's why most people stay stuck. Not because they can't change, but because they don't know who they are without the noise. And when you finally realize that your mind has been replaying borrowed signals your entire life, your ego takes a hit. It can't recover from, because the you it was protecting was never original to begin with. That you, could see been told your entire life to trust your thoughts, to follow your instincts, to believe your inner voice. But what if that's the biggest mistake you've ever made? Because the truth is, the more you trust your thoughts blindly, the deeper you fall into a trap you don't even see. Think about it. Every fear you have, every doubt that stops you, every excuse that keeps you stuck, all of it comes from the same place, your mind, and you trust it without question. That's the problem. You never stop to ask, is this even true? You just obey, like a command you didn't choose. And over time, that obedience becomes your personality. You become predictable, controlled, limited, not by the world, but by the voice inside your own head. And the worst part, you defend it, you argue for it, you build your identity around it. Because admitting it's not yours would destroy the illusion of control. And your ego can't survive that. Because if your thoughts aren't reliable, then neither is the version of you built on them. And that realization, it doesn't just hurt, it breaks you. Nothing in your mind appears out of nowhere. Every single thought has a source, a beginning, a moment where it first entered your system. But you don't remember that moment, so you assume it's yours. That's how the illusion is created. A teacher once said something that stuck. A parent made a comment you never forgot. A failure left a scar that keeps replaying in your head. And now, years later, those same thoughts run automatically as if they belong to you. But they don't. They were planted, repeated, reinforced, until they became part of your identity. And now you live your life based on them, limiting yourself, doubting yourself, holding back, all because of something that was never originally yours. That's the tragedy. You built your entire reality on second-hand thoughts, borrowed beliefs, inherited fears. And the deeper you go, the harder it becomes to separate you from them. Because if you let them go, what's left? Who are you without them? That question is what scares you the most. Because deep down, you know there might be nothing there at all. It feels like you're thinking. It feels like you're analyzing, deciding, choosing. But most of the time, you're just repeating the same pattern, the same fear, the same internal dialogue that has been playing on loop for years. It's not new. It's not original. It's recycled. Your mind takes old experiences, old emotions, old conditioning, and replaces them in different situations, making it seem like a fresh thought. But it's not. It's a script, and you've been following it without realizing. That's why your life feels predictable. That's why you react the same way over and over again, because you're not creating new thoughts. You're trapped in old ones. And the longer you stay in that loop, the more real it feels, until one day you don't even question it anymore. You just accept it as who you are. And that's where you lose yourself completely, because you stop growing. You stop exploring. You stop becoming. You just repeat. And your ego is comfortable with that, because repetition feels safe. But safe doesn't mean real. And once you see that your thinking is just a replay of the past, it hits you hard, because it means you haven't been living in the present at all. You've been stuck in a loop, calling it life. Not all thoughts are equal. Some pass by without impact, but others hit you instantly. You don't question them. You don't analyze them. You just believe them. I'm not good enough. I'll never make it. This isn't for me. And in that exact moment, your entire state changes. Your energy drops. Your actions shrink. Your world becomes smaller. All because of one thought you didn't even choose. That's how powerful it is. And that's why it's dangerous. Because the faster you believe a thought, the less control you have over it. It bypasses logic. It goes straight into identity. And once it becomes part of who you think you are, it starts controlling everything. Your decisions, your behavior, your future, and you don't even realize it's happening because it feels like truth, but it's not truth. It's conditioning. And the moment you start questioning it, your ego resists. It fights back because it's built on those beliefs. Without them, it doesn't exist. And that's the real fear. Not that the thought is false, but that if it is, then everything you've built on top of it is also a lie. You don't just hear your thoughts, you merge with them. The moment a thought appears, you don't step back and observe it, you step into it. You become it. If the thought says I'm weak, you feel weak. If it says I can't do this, you stop trying. There's no distance between you and the thought, no space, no awareness. And that's where the real problem begins. Because without that space, you have no control. You're not choosing your identity. It's being chosen for you, moment by moment, thought by thought. And the more you identify with those thoughts, the stronger they become, until eventually they define you completely. And breaking free from that feels impossible, because it feels like you're trying to escape yourself. But here's the truth. You're not escaping yourself. You're escaping what you've mistaken for yourself. And that realization is painful, because it forces you to admit that the person you've been protecting, defending, and believing in might just be a collection of thoughts that were never yours to begin with. You think your mind is there to help you, to protect you, to guide you, but what if it's actually doing the opposite? What if your mind's main goal is to keep you safe, even if that means keeping you stuck? It avoids risk, it fears change, it prefers the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. That's why every time you try to grow, something inside you pulls you back. Doubt appears, fear increases, excuses get louder. Not because you're incapable, but because your mind is trying to maintain control. It doesn't want the unknown. It doesn't want uncertainty. It wants repetition, stability, predictability, even if that means you never reach your full potential. And the scariest part, it disguises all of this as logic, as reality. So you trust it, you listen, you obey, and you stay exactly where you are. And when you finally realize that the thing you trusted the most has been quietly limiting you, it hits deep, because it means your biggest obstacle was never the world, it was inside you. And your ego hates that truth because it removes every excuse you've ever had. At some point, you have to face the question you've been avoiding your entire life. If your thoughts aren't yours, then who are you? Not your name, not your past, not your beliefs. Strip all of that away, and what's left? Silence. Then that silence feels uncomfortable, almost empty, because you've spent your entire life filling it with noise, with thoughts that gave you a sense of identity. Without them, you feel lost, undefined, exposed. And that's why most people never go this deep, because it requires you to let go of everything you thought you were, to stand in that silence, without labels, without stories, without borrowed ideas. And in that moment, your ego starts to panic, because it realizes it has nothing to hold on to, no identity to protect, no narrative to defend. And that's where the real breakthrough happens. Not when you find a new thought to believe, but when you stop needing thoughts to define you at all. But getting there isn't easy, because it means accepting a truth that shatters everything. The you you've been trying to improve, fix, and understand was never real to begin with. Let's be honest for a second. You don't just have thoughts. You are addicted to them, even the painful ones. The doubt, the overthinking, the scenarios that drain your energy. You keep going back to them like a loop. You can't escape. Why? And your mind is wired to choose what's familiar over what's true. That's why you replay old conversations, relive past failures, imagine worst-case scenarios that haven't even happened yet. It's not random, it's a pattern, a dependency. You've trained your brain to keep producing the same thoughts, and now it feeds on them. And the scariest part, you mistake that addiction for identity. You think this is just how I am, but it's not. It's just what you've repeated long enough to feel normal. And breaking that addiction feels uncomfortable, almost like losing a part of yourself. Because if you stop thinking the way you always have, you don't know who you'll become. And that uncertainty scares you more than the pain itself. So you stay stuck, not because you have to, but because on some level you are addicted to the version of yourself that's trapped. Try this right now. Sit in complete silence, no phone, no distraction, no noise, just you and your mind. Sounds simple, right? But within seconds, something happens. Thoughts get louder. Restlessness builds. You feel the urge to escape, to check something, to do anything but stay there. Why? Because silence removes the distractions that keep you from seeing what's really going on inside. It exposes the chaos, the patterns, the noise you've been ignoring, and that's uncomfortable. Because in silence, you can't hide from your thoughts. You're forced to face them, and deep down, you know most of them don't make sense. They contradict each other. They create fear out of nothing. They control your emotions without permission, and yet you've been trusting them your whole life. That's why silence feels dangerous, not because of what's outside, but because of what's inside. And the moment you sit with it long enough, you start to see the truth, that your mind is constantly talking, but not always telling the truth. And that realization shakes your ego, because it means you've been listening to something unreliable and calling it yourself. You believe you became who you are, but what if you were assigned this identity without realizing it? From childhood, labels were given to you: smart, shy, weak, talented, not good enough. At first, they were just words, but over time, they turned into beliefs. And those beliefs shaped your behavior, your confidence, your limits. You didn't choose them, you accepted them. And now they feel permanent. But they're not. They're just stories that were repeated until they felt real. And the more you act according to those labels, the more they reinforce themselves. It becomes a cycle, a self-fulfilling identity. And breaking out of it feels almost impossible because it feels like you're going against who you are. But here's the truth. You're not going against yourself. You're going against what you were told to be. And that's where the ego resists the most, because it's built on those labels. Without them, it has no definition. And facing that truth is painful, because it means the person you've been trying to improve your whole life was never chosen by you in the first place. Everything you believe about the world comes from your thoughts. The way you see people, situations, yourself, it's all filtered through your mind. But what if that filter is distorted? What if your thoughts aren't showing you reality, but a version of it shaped by fear, past experiences? That means you're not reacting to life as it is, you're reacting to a story your mind is telling you about it. And that story feels real. It feels convincing, because it's constant. It never stops. But that doesn't make it true. It just makes it familiar. And the more you believe it, the more it shapes your actions, your choices, your entire life. You start avoiding opportunities, doubting yourself, holding back, not because reality demands it, but because your thoughts convince you it's necessary. And that's how a fake reality becomes your real one. And breaking out of it is hard because it requires you to question everything you've believed so far. And your ego hates that, because it would rather stay in a comfortable illusion than face an uncomfortable truth. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when everything starts to change. You keep saying you're lost, confused, unsure about your life. But what if you're not actually lost? What if you are just listening to the wrong voice, the one that doubts you, the one that fears everything? the one that overthinks every decision until you feel stuck. That voice isn't guiding you, it's blocking you, but because it's loud, you assume it's important, you assume it's right, and you follow it, even when it leads you nowhere. Meanwhile, there's another part of you, quieter, calmer, more aware, that sees things clearly. But you ignore it because it doesn't scream, it doesn't panic, it just observes, and in a world full of noise, that quiet awareness gets buried. So you keep following the loudest voice and wonder why you feel lost. But the truth is, you were never lost. You just trusted the wrong signal. And once you realize that, everything shifts. Not because your thoughts change instantly, but because you stop believing every single one of them. And that's where real clarity begins. But getting there requires one painful step, accepting that the voice you trusted the most was never meant to lead you. So now, after everything you've seen and everything you've felt, there's only one question left. If your thoughts are not yours, then who have you been your entire life? Just stop for a second and really think about it. Because this is where everything starts to break. Every fear that stopped you, every doubt that made you hesitate, every voice that whispered you are not enough, you listened to it, you trusted it, you obeyed it, and slowly you built your entire life around it. And now you are starting to realize something that's hard to accept. It was never you. Which means every time you held yourself back, every time you chose comfort over growth, every time you believed you couldn't do more, you weren't being honest with yourself, you were being controlled by something you never even questioned. And that truth hits different, because it's not complicated, it's painfully simple. You trusted a voice that didn't deserve your trust, you followed thoughts that were never yours, and now you're standing in a place where you can't pretend anymore. There are two versions of you in this moment. The old one, who believes every thought without question, and the new one, who is starting to see through the illusion. But here's the part that changes everything. Once you see it, you can't go back. Because now, every time a thought enters your mind, there will be a pause, a hesitation, a small gap where you start to question it. And in that gap, something powerful begins to grow, awareness. And awareness is dangerous because it breaks patterns. It exposes lies. It takes away the control that those thoughts had over you for so long. It doesn't just change the way you think. It starts to destroy the version of you that was built on those thoughts. So now the choice is yours, and it's not an easy one. You can go back to the noise, to the comfort of believing everything your mind tells you, or you can stay here in this uncomfortable clarity where nothing feels certain but everything is real. But understand this. Once you stop believing every thought, you don't just lose confusion, you lose the identity that confusion created. And maybe that's why this is so hard to accept, because it means the person you've been protecting, defending, and trying to improve your whole life might not have been real at all. And if that's true, then this isn't the end of your story. This is the moment where the illusion finally starts to fall apart.